Hi, my name's Paul Grogan and welcome to the Gaming Rules official how to play video for Dice Hospital, published by Alley Cat Games. Dice Hospital is a game where you and up to 3 other players take on the responsibilities of running a hospital. Ambulances will arrive filled with patients and you must use a combination of doctors and departments to heal the patients so they are well enough to be sent home. Each patient is represented by a die and the value on the die indicates how healthy they are. Heal a patient above 6 and they can be discharged, earning you points. I'm going to be explaining the rules for the 2 to 4 player game first, and then at the end of the video I'll cover the solo rules. Also, this video is being filmed with some components from the deluxe add-on pack. If you don't have that pack, just use the components from the base game. Each player receives a starting hospital board and places 3 white meeples on the nurse's station. Players then take the 2 score markers in their chosen player colour. One is placed next to their hospital board to remind them what colour they are, and the other is placed on the bottom of the scoreboard, and this is used to track the player's points during the game. The round marker is placed here so that the number 1 space is visible. This indicates that it is round 1. The player to have last visited hospital is the starting player, and they receive the first player marker. Take a number of ambulances using the lowest numbers equal to 1 more than the number of players in the game, and place them in the middle of the table. Take the department tiles and shuffle them all into a face down stack, and then reveal a number of tiles equal to 1 fewer than the number of players in the game. Do the same with the specialist cards, shuffle them, put them in a stack, and reveal 1 fewer than the number of players. If you're playing a 2-player game, there will be only 1 revealed department and 1 revealed specialist. So the first player will then choose to reveal either another department or another specialist. Place the coloured meeples in a supply nearby, along with the blood bag tokens and the fatality tokens. Take the appropriate amount of dice for the number of players in the game. With 4 players, use all the dice, which is 21 of each colour. With 3 players, remove 3 dice of each colour. And with 2 players, remove 6 dice of each colour. Place the dice that will be used into the bag and mix them up. Starting with the first player and going clockwise, each player draws 3 dice out of the bag at random. You set one of these dice to a 3, one to a 4 and one to a 5, and then place them in your hospital wards, on the top spaces with the arrow on. These are the untreated spaces. You can put the dice all in the same ward or split them up between wards. It doesn't actually matter. I like to keep all dice of the same colour together, but that might just be me. The hospital administrator cards are next, and you might not want to use these for your first game or when playing with less experienced gamers. Shuffle them and deal 2 cards to each player. You then choose one of the 2 cards you were dealt and place it face up near your hospital board. This card gives you a special ability during the game, and they're all explained in the rulebook. Give each player a 2-sided reference card, and you're now ready to begin. Dice Hospital is played over 8 rounds, and each round is divided into 6 phases. First, ambulances filled with patients will arrive at your hospital, and you must transfer those patients into your wards. Then, you get a chance to improve your hospital by adding a new department or hiring a specialist. Phase 3 is where you activate your hospital, place nurses and specialists on your departments to heal your patients. Any dice healed to a 7 or higher is placed in the discharge lounge. After you have done everything you can, all patients who are not treated this round are reduced in value by 1. A patient reduced in value below 1 dies. Phase 5 is where you score points for the patients that were discharged this round. And then finally, there's a shift change where things are reset ready for the next round. After 8 rounds of play, the player with the most points wins the game. The best thing about being the first player is that you get to roll the dice. Take 3 dice from the bag for each ambulance in the game. So in my 3-player game here, I'm going to draw 12 dice. The dice are all rolled, and any dice showing a 1 or 6 are re-rolled until they show a value between 2 and 5. The dice are now placed in the ambulances, one by one, starting with the 2s and then the 3s and so on. And you fill the ambulances in order, starting with ambulance number 1. When there's a choice over which dice to place, the player to the right of the first player decides. Let's go through this now to see it in action. I only have 2 2s, so they go in ambulance 1. I have 4 3s, one of them will go in ambulance 1, and it's up to the player to the right of the first player to choose which. The rest of the 3s go in ambulance 2, I only have 1 4, and that goes in ambulance 3. But then I have 5 5s, so again, it's up to the player to the right of the first player to decide which dice go where. After the ambulances are filled with patients, each player must take one of the ambulances. The first player gets the first choice and then clockwise around the table, with the only restriction being that the first player cannot choose ambulance number 1. Your choice of which ambulance to take will depend on a number of factors. The first one being that dice with higher values are healthier patients, and they'll need a lot less effort to heal them enough to send them home. But the number on the ambulance will determine the order of play for the next phase, which can be very important. You could choose this ambulance, for example, full of patients who are close to full health, but you'll be the last player to choose a hospital improvement in the next phase. Or you could choose this one. The patients are going to need a lot of healing, but you will go first in the next phase. Also, later in the game, the departments and specialists you currently have in your hospital will also have an impact on your choice. You may really want 2 red 3s, for example, so therefore you might want to take this ambulance. The player who chose the lowest numbered ambulance takes the first player marker and also gets a blood bag token from the supply. I'll explain blood bags later. A quick reminder, there's always 1 more ambulance than the number of players in the game, so there will always be 1 ambulance left untaken. Also remember that the current first player cannot choose ambulance number 1, but if they choose ambulance number 2 and nobody else takes ambulance number 1, then the current first player keeps the first player marker and gets a blood bag. Once you have an ambulance, you then transfer the patients into your wards. You have room for 12 patients in your wards, the top spaces with the arrow icon. The new patients can go anywhere, it doesn't actually matter. However, if you do not have enough space for all of the new patients, you must make room for them by removing existing patients from your hospital to accommodate the new intake. So in this situation, I only have 2 empty spaces in my wards, so I must choose one of the current patients to remove to make room for the new ones. And for each patient removed this way, return the dice to the bag and place a fatality token in your morgue. This will be worth negative points at the end of the game. In this phase, each player gets to improve their hospital by taking either a new department or a new specialist from those on display. Players take turn in this phase in ambulance order. The player who took ambulance 1 picks first, then ambulance 2 and so on. When you take a department, just attach it anywhere to your hospital board. The exact position doesn't matter. If you take a specialist, take the card, place it near your hospital board, and then also take a meeple of the corresponding colour and place it on the card. It is allowed to have 2 improvements of the same name if you want to. All of the improvements, the different departments and the specialists are fully explained in the back of the rulebook, but I will explain a few of them in the next chapter. After everyone has taken an improvement, all players may, if they want to, return any one improvement they have, including one they just took this round, to the bottom of the appropriate stack to gain a blood bag token. Now, the reasons for returning an improvement may not be obvious at first, and you rarely want to be doing this at the start of the game, as you'll generally need your new departments and specialists in the beginning. However, later in the game you may end up with improvements that you no longer need, so getting rid of one of them for a blood bag token could be more useful. This is where all of the action happens. You use your nurses and specialists to try and heal as many patients as possible. This phase can actually be played at the same time by all players, but I recommend when you are learning the game to get each player to go through what they're doing to ensure that everybody understands how the game works. Once everyone is comfortable with the rules, simultaneous play can speed the game up. You place your meeples one at a time into your departments, resolving the effect of each one before placing the next one. Each meeple can only be used once per round, and each department can also only be used once per round. Each department heals a specific colour and or value of patient. Let's look at the ones on your starting board now and see how they work. The pharmacy will heal any one green patient by 1 step, so to use it I could place a nurse there and then change this green dice from a 5 to a 6. The first time in a round that a patient is treated, they are moved from the top untreated space to the bottom treated space. This denotes that they have received treatment this round, but they can still be healed further in the same round. And this is a very important rule and something that new players often forget. Each patient can be healed multiple times in a round. You just move them to the treated space the first time that they are healed. The critical care unit and the oncology department do a similar thing but for red dice and yellow dice. These three departments heal a patient of specific value. I could, for example, place a nurse in the clinic to heal the green patient of value 6 by 1 step. This means that they are fully healed, so I move them to the discharge lounge. Let's take a look at some of the improvements now, which, as I mentioned earlier, are fully explained in the rulebook, and a summary of the icons is also shown on the back of the reference card. The anaesthesia department requires you to have 3 red patients of the same value, and if you do, you can place a meeple in that department to heal each of those patients by 1 step. And importantly, you must have those 3 patients. If you only had 2 patients of the same value, you could not use this department. The orthopaedics department heals any 1 yellow patient by 3 steps. And yes, you can use this on a patient who was value 5, for example. They are increased beyond 6 and therefore discharged. Now to explain some of the specialists. But it's important to remember that any nurse or specialist can work in any department. So this microbiologist, who is green, could, for example, work in renal medicine, which is yellow. But there are benefits when using a specialist to do a certain thing. For example, this microbiologist, I'm going to call her Joyce, when she heals a green patient, she also heals a different patient of the same value. So I could send Joyce to the pharmacy, heal this green patient from a 3 to a 4, and then use her special ability to also heal this red 3 to a 4. Awesome! As the game progresses, you will get more new departments and specialists to be able to manage your patients better. Now, to explain the blood bags. Blood bag tokens have 2 uses during the game, but if you don't use them, they're worth 1 point at the end of the game. To use one, return it to the supply to either heal one of your patients by 1 step, or temporarily change the colour of one of your patients until the end of this phase. For example, you have the anaesthesia department that requires 3 red patients all of the same value, but you only have 2 red patients of the same value. So you could use a blood bag token to temporarily change the colour of this green patient to red, allowing you to now use the anaesthesia department. Since that green patient is considered to be red until the end of the phase, I recommend placing the die in a department matching its new colour. After all players have activated their hospitals, any patient who did not receive treatment this round, i.e. they are on one of the untreated spaces, has its value lowered by 1 step from neglect. So in this case here, I was unable to treat these 2 patients, and they are both reduced in value by 1. And this patient, because it would be reduced to 0, becomes a fatality. The die is returned to the bag, and I place a fatality token in my morgue. I should probably also expect a lawsuit. Players now score points based on how many patients they discharged this round. This is shown on the reference card. The more you discharge in a round, the more points you get. And at this point, after discharging patients, anyone who ends this phase with empty wards scores a bonus 5 points. If this is the 8th round of the game, you can skip this step and proceed to final scoring. Otherwise, you have a few things to do to prepare for the next round. Move your nurses back to your nurses station and place all specialists back on their cards. Return all treated patients back to the untreated spaces in your wards, and return your ambulance to the middle of the table. Also, the round marker should be rotated 1 step to indicate the new round. Any unclaimed departments and specialists are returned to the bottom of the appropriate stacks, and new ones are revealed just like in setup. Remember, the first player marker only changes hands during phase 1 when it's given to the player who chose the lowest numbered ambulance. It does not move around the table otherwise. After the 8th round is complete, each player adjusts their score as follows. 1 point for each blood bag token, and -2 points for each fatality token. The player with the most points wins the game, and in case of a tie, the tied player with the fewest patients remaining is the winner. And if it's still a tie, it's the one with the highest total value of all patients added up who wins. And if that's still a tie, it's a shared victory. Dice Hospital can be played as a solo game. You do not use the ambulances or the hospital administrator cards, and you only use 11 dice of each colour in the bag. In addition, you need to use the medical report cards. Shuffle them and then deal out 2 rows each of 3 cards. These cards show a combination of colours required to complete them and how many points they are worth. You may only complete cards on the bottom row. And to complete a report, you must have dice of the depicted colour in your discharge lounge at the start of Phase 5, when you discharge patients. You may complete multiple cards on the same round, but each patient can only count towards one report. So in order to complete these 2 reports in the same round, I would need to discharge 5 green patients. Once you have completed a report, take the card and then slide the next one down, which could be completed immediately if you have the dice to do so. Other rules changes for the solo game are as follows. During patient intake, draw 4 dice out of the bag and roll them, re-rolling any 1s and 6s as normal. Choose any 3 of these dice to take in as new patients and return the 4th die to the bag. If the total value on the 3 dice you selected is less than 9, take a blood bag. At the beginning of Phase 2, reveal 1 department and 1 specialist. Choose one to take and return the other to the bottom of the stack. At the end of the game, completed medical reports are worth the points printed on them, but any incomplete medical reports count as negative points at the end of the game, so try to complete as many of them as you can. Keep a note of your final score and try to beat it the next time you play. In addition to the main game, there are a number of optional rules to increase replayability. These include event cards, where each round something happens that might make you have to rethink your plans. There are also 3 ways to increase the difficulty of the game, and you can use any or even all of them. And there are final round collections, where other hospitals in the city send ambulances to collect any patients that you have left, scoring you additional points. The Deluxe add-on, as well as blinging up your game, also includes new experimental departments and specialists, although if I'm honest, I'm not sure I'd want to be sent to an experimental therapy department. I hope you found this video useful in learning how to play Dice Hospital. For more of my videos, please consider subscribing to the channel. And if you have any questions about the game, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. Until next time, take care and thanks for watching.